Welcome back to The Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans, by new fans. My name is Mike Hurley, and I'm joined by team principal Austin Evans.
Hello, I'm going to only be on FaceTime for this episode, but I just want to call in and say, good job, team. I'm enjoying my vacation today.
You spotted that, right? Where they were like, oh, he's talking to his mom and dad. Oh, no, wait, it's Toto.
And the worst part was, you see Carlos, it's like Carlos is like the unwanted stepchild just sitting there, and everyone's like having fun. He's just like,
chatting with dad.
hi, Toto. It's me.
You love me too, right?
Yeah, me, right. Well, Mike, I feel like normally there's a lot to talk about with the race, but would you like to give us the top highlight? Because I feel like there's one very big thing that happened today that you've been waiting for literally all season.
My boys are back, baby. 1, 2.
Boys are back.
1, 2. It's taken a long time for me to feel this way, but now feels better. Feels better.
Yeah.
This feels better for me as a fan, right? Like, I desperately wanted to see a win. I wanted it for both of them, right? Like, equally today. I couldn't have picked, as a Mercedes fan, who I would want more, right? Because you've got, on one hand, you've got George Russell's first win. And like I was saying this to my wife before we started, and like, this is so important for him because he probably thought he could have won the entire season before it began, right? He's going in at Mercedes, right? Like, to George, it's like, oh, I'm in for a shot. But then this is how it ended up panning out for him. And then you've got Lewis, obviously an incredibly important weekend for him, becoming an honorary citizen of Brazil. But also a win for Lewis will continue his streak. He's won a race in every season, and it is looking increasingly now he has one more shot at it. And that's, he's a man of so many records. Does he care about this one? I don't know, but he obviously also wants to win. So, truly wild. This has been an actually incredible weekend of racing. And we should probably talk about it, but we should start as we always do. Can you fill in the rest of the starting order for us?
I can. And boys, let's talk about it. So, of course, we've got P1 George, P2 Lewis, and we've got Carlos coming in P3. Carlos had a really good race, which I know we're going to be talking about in a little bit. Then going down the rest of the order, man, is there a lot of team orders nonsense here. We've got Leclerc P4, we've got Alonso P5, Verstappen P6, Checo P7, Ocon P8, Bottas P9, and surprisingly, I didn't realize until after the race, Lance Stroll P10. He actually snuck in and ended up getting the last point off of Seb, who ended up coming in to 11th, which kind of sucks because Seb had a terrific race, and I completely missed in the sort of the drama of the last few laps exactly what happened to Seb and how Lance got through. But yeah, man, boy, there's a lot to talk about. Good, and man, there's some bad things that people are very upset about right now.
Yep. We'll get to those. Let's try and do this in order. So it was a sprint weekend. And in before qualifying, like before sprint, we had qualifying. Kevin Magnussen, which that feels like a month ago that Kevin Magnussen got pole position. It was just one of those things where, and I think he said that Haas had been preparing for this, like they had been attempting this, and Kevin had this whole season of like when he would get his first lap in to try and get the best first lap he could on the chance that something like this occurred, which was that George messed up and beached it and was a red flag. I actually didn't see qualifying. I think there were a couple. I think Charles Leclerc had an issue as well, if I'm remembering rightly from what I read. I didn't see qualifying, but it ended up with Kevin Magnussen being on pole, but on pole obviously for then the sprint, which sets the order for the race. So there's this weird thing when they did it this year. We spoke about it on one of the earlier episodes of the show, because when they changed the rules a little bit this time around, where like technically Kevin Magnussen will always count this as a pole, even though he did not start first today. He started first in the sprint, and the winner of the sprint goes first, but they're not technically pole. Very strange.
Yes, that all is correct and checks out. It's very, very complicated. But yeah, so the thing was for qualifying, which I know we don't have to get into for a lot, so there's so much to talk about. But it was rainy. It was kind of weather was going to be coming and going. It wasn't really quite clear what was going on. But what basically the Haas had, and specifically Kevin Magnussen, that car can fire up its tires really well. Kevin put in a terrific lap. So, yes, it seems like it was a fluke. And obviously, there was some luck involved. But the top 9 of the top 10 drivers in Q3 all got at least one shot at a lap, right? And Kevin was the one who strung it together best. Yes, he was starting sort of at the lead because the Haas pit box basically allowed him to just pull straight out onto the track. But still, terrific job there. And then you get to the sprint, and of course, he was not able to hold that P1. I believe he ended up in 8th, which still got Haas a very valuable point. But the sprint itself, man, there's a lot to talk about there too. So for me, I think it was not a massive surprise to see Mercedes are doing better, but I did not expect them to completely just outclass Max and the Red Bulls, right?
They owned them.
It is very clear.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All weekend, they owned them. And it went in a way that I wasn't expecting. And I think I even saw a clip today when Max Verstappen before the race was just like, Mercedes are unstoppable. Like he said, it's just like, they look unstoppable. And I don't, I'm not aware of anything particular. I guess this is just the slow march of progress that they've been doing, plus clearly a track that suits the car, right? Like, I think it's a mix of all of it. But nevertheless, because there was question yesterday because in the sprint, Max was on mediums and the Mercedes were on softs. And, and I think, I don't remember what Perez's tire choice was. And of course, we didn't actually truly get to see a competition today with Max at the top, which again we'll get to, but nevertheless, the Mercedes were also eating alive Perez. So they had the ability to keep the Red Bull car away, which is just not a thing that they have had the ability to do for the majority of the season. Max or Perez didn't matter. The same for the Ferraris as well. They could also keep the Ferraris at bay, even when they were on a worse tire, right? They're towards the end, right? Sainz had a newer tire, fresher tire, still they couldn't get to it. And, so yeah, it's been all weekend that the Mercedes has really just been right on whatever the build they needed. They absolutely ticked every single box this weekend, and it's turned into a massive bag of points for them with with the sprint. Of course, Carlos picked up, I don't remember the numbers now, but Carlos actually was second, but he had a engine penalty which put him down in 7th, I think, to start the race today. So he got points, but this is now, I believe now it is who is second in the constructor will be decided next weekend. It could still be Mercedes, which would be bananas, right?
Yeah. So right now, Ferrari are on 514 points and Mercedes are on 491. So I would still say Ferrari are a pretty heavy favorite to still come in P2. But I mean, you see something like this happen again.
Well, yeah. Another of these, and that's it, right? They did it. So, I mean, will that happen? Exactly. Who knows, right? That feels way too early to call. We've got to wait a week, 6 days from now to see how feasible that could be. But
but something has happened, right? Mercedes have unlocked something with their car. I mean, it's easy to forget they're the only ones on the field right now with that zero side pod concept, right? And it has not been working. And they've just been sort of lost for the majority of the season, not understanding. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's bad. The last few races, they've got something, right? And this was, I think, the most obvious example of there was no luck involved. There was no rain. There was nothing. They were just the faster car. They didn't need better strategy. They didn't need anything. They just had the best car on the track today, especially given the fact that Lewis was, P12 or something at one point, early in the race, and still was able to come all the way through to come into P2 and have a fair shot. And George, I mean, look, again, we're going to talk a lot more about the race, but George just absolutely dominated. Mm-hmm. So it's to me, it's clear that at the very last moments of this championship this year, Mercedes have finally gotten on their car, which is going to be very interesting because what are they going to do next year? Are they going to continue this sort of the development of this sort of design? Are they going to go to something totally different? At this point, you've got to imagine that they're well underway. They've probably already committed to whatever the concept is for next year. So I'm going to be very curious to see. But at any rate, it does seem pretty promising for the championship next year. It's going to be a whole lot closer than it was this year.
Yeah, I mean, because I should say, let's imagine that they've committed to now a side pod design, right? Mm-hmm. They now have learned from other teams a little bit about side pod design, and they've now got their non-side pod car working when that's at a disadvantage. So if you combine all of that knowledge together, even if they had decided on going with side pods, you could imagine a scenario in which they could try and craft the best car out of all of those pieces of information. But again, we never know, right? It's like we never would have expected them to be in the situation that they were in. So you can truly never understand how these things are going to go until
they're just going to have a side pod on one side, no side pod on the other side. It'll be flawless design.
They'll be fast
run
around
tracks.
half the corners, right? Yeah. So like they're just going to split the difference.
That's okay. That's why us as the back markers, that's why we get paid the big bucks, because we've got those big sort of big brain.
This is why you have steadily gone through the ranks. You've been like technical director, and now you're team principal now. Like it's this kind of big brain thinking that will get you up to the top. We got to talk about the race, right? Because there was just so much. Yes. But I wanted to touch on two things from the sprint before we do. One was teammate troubles up and down the field. So the two Alpines came together twice, which is just unbelievable, right? That happened. And then the Astons as well, which ended up with Stroll. Like you should mention, Stroll got in the points today, but he had a big penalty on his hands, so he was very lucky to get that.
Yeah, like, I mean, so for the Alpines, right, I think it was a little bit more 50-50. Like, I know Alonso did get a penalty for one of the things. To me, they're both just,
he owned up to it, but, like, afterwards, he was like, yeah, that was on me. But, like, that second one.
But one of them.
The second one.
Yeah, exactly. But, like, regardless, you shouldn't be racing like that with anyone, much less your teammate. It's clear that, Alonso, this is his, second to last race today for the team. He's on his way out, and he's been very clear. He's like, look, I just want to just get in that green car and just forget all about this, because he's had, quite honestly, a pretty miserable season, just with all the reliability issues and stuff. The thing, though, that I think was the most egregious yesterday was what Lance did. Like, Lance fully pushed Seb onto the grass, almost into the wall, for essentially no reason, right? Like, he started coming over and kept coming over and kept coming over. He got I would say, fairly reasonable penalty. I think maybe even a little bit of a lenient one, because that sort of, like, okay, yeah, you don't race your teammate hard generally, but you don't put anyone basically onto the grass, into the wall, especially because he wasn't even going to be able to hold the position anyway. Like, it was just such a dumb move.
Yeah, it was.
So, yeah, but if that wasn't enough, that was basically just a precursor to some of the other teammate drama that we had for the actual race. But I got to say, before we even move on to the actual race, between qualifying, between the sprint, between the race, this track this weekend was absolutely phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
Like, just
it's just overtaking.
Excitement.
The overtaking. I think I heard
everything.
37 overtakes in the sprint. That is unbelievable. There's only 20 laps. Yeah. Like, truly, this has been a fantastic weekend of racing. Interlagos is a perfect track for sprints. Like, sprint races have a way of either being brilliant or terrible. I feel like I have not yet seen one that's in between. Like, they're either really good or not. And this track proved how they can work, and I hope that if they're going to continue doing these, we know they're going up to 6. That, like, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't actually think they haven't announced which tracks. I hope that the FIA specifically pick the tracks with good overtaking opportunities. Like, I'm saying this now, they put one in Monaco, right? Just like, I hope that that is what they aim at specifically. It's like, we go for tracks where we can maximize the amount of excitement. Otherwise, there is no point in having a sprint if you can't have a lot of overtaking. There just is no point. That is all this is for. It's a high speed 20-something lap of just pure overtaking to set the grid. If you're just going to end up moving people around in mostly the same order, we may as well just stick to regular qualifying.
Exactly, right? I mean, you can really think about a sprint as a, 20-lap extension of the race, and there's a red flag and 20 hours in between. It's just a little bit of extra race to kind of, if there's going to be some excitement or whatever to happen. But, I mean, it doesn't make a massive difference at the end of the day. But I will say I agree with a lot of people who do like the sprints, and that even the most boring sprint is still a little bit more interesting than just watching, like, FP3. Like, I don't think there's a lot of interest or intrigue there. But, Mike, we got to do this. We got to talk about this race.
All right, box.
Boy, oh boy, is there a lot. Are we ready to go in? Box for, not inters. No, we're going to need some softs for this one. I think we're definitely going to be in need of some softs.
I'm ready.
All right, ready?
Yep.
Set, and go.
This episode of The Backmarkers is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month. And now the plot twist, no, there isn't one. Seriously, Mint Mobile just has premium wireless for $15 a month. There's no trapping you into a 2-year contract or opening the bill to find all these crazy fees. There's no luring you in with free subscriptions to streaming services that you're going to forget to cancel and end up being charged for. None of that. They just offer the right stuff and they do it right. And I think the best thing is, look, you decided to switch. You want to go to Mint Mobile. You want to get it set up quickly. And that is what they're all about. They send you the SIM. You put it in your device. You're ready to go. It's incredibly fast, incredibly easy, and you're going to benefit from great deals and great data. For people who don't like getting their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text, plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone of any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with all your existing contacts. So switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service. Get premium wireless service for just $15 a month and no unexpected plot twists at mintmobile.com/backmarkers. That's mintmobile.com/backmarkers. Seriously, you're going to make your wallet very happy at mintmobile.com/backmarkers. Our thanks to Mint Mobile for their support of the Backmarkers and all of Relay FM.
Time.
Okay.
Mike, how you feeling about that one?
I really went for it at the last second. I didn't take a breath, so I was trying to just sneak in there. Oh,
125.9. Congratulations, my friend. You had, arm day. Your wheel guns were all sort of tuned up. That was the fastest mint spot we have ever done. That's actually, Mike, I'm going to go back through. That's the fastest ad read we've ever had on the show ever.
That is incredible. Thank you very much. That is almost like the Red Bull nose cone change, which is a perfect segue into absolute lap and then restart disasters. So lap 1, cast your mind back. Daniel Ricciardo pays the ultimate price.
Whoa. Okay, maybe an ultimate price.
He's done now. They fired him. They got rid of him.
He's done.
They're like, we don't even want you for the last race.
I mean, after that one,
that was real stupid. This was one of those things where he was stupid, right? And it is rare that kind of thing happens, that you make a stupid mistake like that and it immediately bites you. But he hits K-Mag, K-Mag spins, Daniel Ricciardo tries to go around the outside, bang, race over for the both of them.
Right into it.
So unfortunate for Kevin Magnussen, man. That's the real bad part of it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, look, let's be real. I don't think he was probably on pace to get points today. He got, yesterday was kind of his big day, and really Friday. I will say...
He should have got to at least race the race, though,
Yes. I agree with that. But to me, while obviously Danny Rick was 110% in the wrong there, I am always a little surprised that this kind of stuff doesn't happen more often. I mean, you think about the visibility you have in these cars. You think about how close they get all the time. You think about how easy it is just to get, because you figure, you see your, obviously your wheels and the wheel fairings and stuff, but then your wing goes so far forward, so far out. It's really easy to do something like this, right? But that being said, a clumsy error, completely wrecked K-Mag's race. And for what very well might be the second to last race of Daniel Ricciardo's career, let's not talk about it. I don't even talk about it. It's bad.
But then that ended up getting to a situation where we had a safety car, and then we had safety car restart, which caused absolute pandemonium. So on the restart, we had George, and Hamilton was still in second at this point, right?
I believe he was at that point.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
And Max had made some good moves, and he was coming up on Hamilton. They come together. Hamilton loses what seemed to be pretty huge chunks out of his floor, or his side, the side wing. I don't know what that part of it
looked like a pretty big whack. Yeah.
And did Verstappen lose his entire front wing? Or just
he lost half of his wing,
right? Half of it.
TV picture,
because I know that I heard this during the sprint, which I didn't know, which is interesting because they have the side plates on the wing, and if they come off, sometimes teams are told to come in. But apparently Red Bull had previously demonstrated to the FIA that their wing has enough structural integrity that if this happens, they can race. My theory now is they need to make sure it has the structural integrity because Max will keep putting it into the side of everybody. So they had to ensure that it had structural integrity. But he lost enough of the wing that he had to pit, and he had to pit early. That was basically the end of Max Verstappen's race, especially because he then got given a 5-second penalty for that.
Yeah, okay, look, I will say I'm not a massive fan of the penalty that Max got. I feel like they were both being pretty aggressive. And while, yes, technically Lewis was ahead, Lewis gave Max no space. And yeah, Max could have stepped out of it maybe, but he was pretty committed to the move. I think Max getting that penalty was a little bit unfair, especially considering that he, obviously was the one who had the most damage. But from certain angles, it did look pretty aggressive. I think it's a little more 50-50 than just purely Max's fault. But it definitely set the race up to be quite interesting because not only did Max have to end up coming into the pits and changing, his very, very quick pit stop for the new nose cone. That threw Lewis back. I don't know where he landed it. It's like P9, P10. He definitely had some.
It looked bad for a while. It looked like he was out. Like I thought he was out because he just flew right back, and maybe he was being conservative, right? Like because then as well, immediately after that, Lando hit Leclerc. Leclerc span and put it in the wall. But he was able to bring it back out again, so there wasn't a need for another safety car. Which is, if there was another safety car, then Max's race probably would have looked quite different, right? Because he would have kept 10 seconds.
He was like 45 seconds behind or something at the end of that, because obviously he had to come in under green, stop, change, everything like that.
And he probably took the rest of that lap pretty slowly, right? So that was a big time difference that he probably lost at that point too. My kind of feeling on it is obviously I would tend to side with Lewis, right? I look at something like this and I kind of look at it as like there was no way that was going to go any differently between the two of them. Right? Like they were always coming together. If they were getting that close, they were going to get real close. And my natural assumption on this is the stewards maybe see something or have data that we don't that leads them to that, but I'm perfectly willing to accept that maybe that was a harsher penalty than was necessary. But especially because he lost out so much. Exactly. I don't know if it was necessary to give him the additional 5 seconds because if we're looking at between Lewis and Max, immediately you could see that now Max is he lost in that. Lewis was fine. So I don't know if it was necessary to give that penalty. We'll see.
Yeah. It's one of those things where look, we know that Max and Lewis, when they come together, neither of them are going to give an inch, right? So it's not really a surprise that something like this happened. And the only thing I'll say that I will give to the stewards a little bit, there was one helicopter angle, which did kind of show that Max really was kind of coming around and was clearly behind Lewis. I'm assuming that that's what the stewards saw and that was what they said because something about, the front axle, blah, 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 whatever. Regardless, it didn't end up making a massive difference. The much bigger penalty was really just the fact that, Max had to come in and change the nose and everything like that.
They get data about the angle of the wheel and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So I know that a lot of telemetry is being live transmitted, but also I know that some things, and specifically I think they've got some 360 cameras or something on the car, but I know some things they do actually have to download after the race. So I'm not entirely sure. I seem to recall maybe it was last year, there was some incident where the stewards wanted to wait until the cars were in and actually download some more data or something, but I'm not entirely clear on what they see live versus what they're able to get after the fact. But regardless, that was a huge deal for George specifically because then suddenly the race was just opened up. Everyone was way behind him. Clearly he had the pace. And on top of that, Leclerc basically being taken out, although obviously he wasn't entirely, but sent pretty much straight to the back. That also made things, the sea was parting for him, right? Mm-hmm. Lando, clearly not a great day. Now, mind you, Lando did get, I think, a very well-deserved penalty. I think he just went wide. I don't think it was intentional, but he definitely just went wide and nearly ruined Leclerc's race.
Did Lando get a penalty? I missed that.
We did. I think he got a 5-second penalty,
Okay.
which ultimately didn't matter because his engine gave out like 2/3 of the race. Actually, it was, yeah, but 2/3 of the way through the race. But
just a bad weekend for Lando Norris. He had food poisoning, you know, like you could see like it wasn't all there for him this weekend, and then it seemed like he was nursing some issue from that collision with Leclerc, and maybe that led to the DNF, but I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't
it
really
could have been a
see.
hydraulic thing.
Yeah, it could have been hydraulics, right? Yeah. That's a good point.
You never know. You never know. I mean, one week we'll see Fernando Alonso's car fly through the air, land completely fine. 5 minutes later, you'll see someone tap another side pod, and the entire car just gives
explodes
out.
into a like because that's the thing, right? Lewis's car looked like it exploded today. Like like there was so much shrapnel flying everywhere, but then it seemed to absolutely not bother him at all. So who knows?
Well, I do think a lot of that was probably Max's wing, because he did lose a full half of his wing, and it did kind of explode everywhere.
But similarly, then driving over that amount of debris, right? Like some of that must have got caught up in his car, especially when like Sainz's race was partly ruined by just a tear off going in the engine.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like a tiny piece of plastic like that. But then there are all these huge pieces of carbon fiber. It's so funny how like just the luck can play in to a driver's race.
100%. Yeah, and I think it was Leclerc earlier this year who had a similar issue, right? Wasn't it like Max like tore off, tear off, and it went right into his brake duct or something?
I can't believe that they are that those things are just allowed to be thrown. Like it really kind of does. I think like. It tells like a different story to some of the other stuff that we see. Like it's just very strange considering it can have an impact. Like if it was like, oh no, these things are made from such a material that even if they go in the engine, they just immediately disintegrate. Like no, if one gets in, it can cause significant problems. And so it is kind of odd that they're allowed to just throw them like at what seemingly appears to be any point. Like I don't know if there is a rule over what. Anyway, it's very strange.
Yeah.
I want to jump straight to the end because this is going to be, I think, the big talking point of this race, right? So like, which is hilarious because we got George Russell and his maiden win, but the big talking point now is going to be the situation between Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, and Red Bull. This actually started with the sprint race. So during the sprint race, Sergio asked for track placement over Max because he is at the point where he has Charles Leclerc on his tail for second and wanted the points. The points are important to him. You know, they were one up the other. Team orders were denied, couldn't do it. So we go into the race today. Obviously, Max is having a not great race, but after a safety car, was able to pull up a lot of points, like a lot of places, and he was doing well. And they let Sergio asked, I believe at this point, to keep the place. I can't remember exactly what was going on there, but then they allowed Max through with the idea, like they said, like let Max through. He can try and jump because if he can jump to Leclerc, he's going to hold you back, and then that's going to keep that distance a little further, right? Because then Leclerc's going to get less points. It is basically as effective as if Sergio finished in front of him.
And to be fair, at this point in the race, I think Max was on a newer set of tires, but regardless, was significantly faster, right?
Yeah.
Checo was falling. He went from like P3 to like P6, I think, at this point. Max came through. A little bit of a questionable decision. It does, and especially in hindsight, I think we have a little bit more context on it. But it did seem a little bit more like the team didn't really want to have to deal with it. So they're just like, hey, just let him through. He'll pass everyone in front of you. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
Which he was not able to do.
Wasn't able to do it. And then Sergio was told, there was radio with this with her before, Sergio was told, if you're together on the last lap, you can swap places. Which makes perfect sense, right? We're going to let him through now to try and achieve something for you. If he can't achieve that and it won't affect his race any further, you two can swap over. So I expect Sergio did everything he could to try and stay behind Max. Like he made that his goal now, right? Like I'm going to make that my goal. Final lap, Max is radioed in, swap the place, silence, team confirms it, and he says, basically, I'm not doing it. I'm paraphrasing here, right? Like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
You know my reasons, whatever that is. I ain't doing it. I told you to stop asking me, basically. Oh, it's bad. That's so bad.
Look.
This is so bad. And
it's so
a couple of things that I saw just after we went live, because I just wanted to double check, because I knew some stuff was going to come out. On team radio, Sergio Perez said, it shows who he really is. And then I saw this in a translation from an interview, right? So like a post-race interview, Sergio said, I think if he has 2 championships, it's thanks to me.
You know what?
He ain't wrong.
One of those is thanks to him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right. So
his first one. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like Checo has been an incredible wingman. Now, this kind of stuff doesn't happen as often as it used to, right? But I mean, you think back to like the Michael Schumacher days, right? Where he was the undisputed number 1 of that team. It was written into the contract. And to be fair, like back in the old days, this was a very common practice, right? Where you would have a number 1 driver, number 2 driver just had to do whatever, but the number 1 driver basically would, like, it was written in his contract, hey, you know what? You can never tell me to get out of the way for my teammate. Like, I always have to have the number 1 status, right? Now, obviously, we don't know exactly what Max's and Checo's contracts are. It has seemed like this, that obviously Max does get priority, although obviously these days I think it's a little maybe not quite as kosher to be talking about, oh, yeah, I'm the number 1, so whatever. But there's been a little bit of like a subtext here, right? And you've seen that Checo, while clearly not on the same level of performance as Max, has done his job well, right? He's been there to pick up a handful of wins when Max wasn't able to do it. He's been able to do things, you know, he was the Mexican Minister of Defense to hold back Lewis for a while, you know, in the race last year. He's been able to do a good job of this, right? And look, this is just petty and stupid. And look, I'm a fan of Max, right? I think he's an absolutely incredibly talented racing driver. What are you doing? This is like P6 versus P7.
You're the world champion.
You won everything.
You're the world champion. Why? Why? You should be doing at this point everything to help the team. There's nothing left for you. Like part of your, as the leader of a team, right? As the number 1, I feel like, as an observer of the sport, part of your everything should be to drive your team forward. If you have achieved literally everything you can as a driver in this season because of you and your team, now you help the rest of the team, that includes your teammate, because then you as a driver will be helping your team take first, second, and constructors. Now, you should be doing everything you can at that point. You should be, at that point, sacrificing places for you to build gaps for Sergio. Like, why would you not do that? Like, you don't have to win every race, especially when, come on, now let's not be ridiculous. You knew you weren't going to win this one, right? Yeah. You weren't going to win this one. You weren't. So why do this? I don't understand it. Like, I really don't get it. And, like, I'm going to compare him to Lewis now, all right? Now, Lewis wanted this win, and he tried to get this win, and Mercedes were going to let him have the win if he got close, right? Like, they said, you can race. Like, just do whatever you're going to do. We're not going to pull team orders. On the radio, now, bearing in mind, like, I was really intrigued, because they had a tire call that they pushed Lewis to take, which he didn't want, right? He had to change. He did a tire change, which he vehemently did not want, but they forced him into the box. So I was wondering, like, is he going to be upset about this? As like, maybe he could see that as like, oh, I didn't win because of this, right? And on the radio, immediately after the race, congratulates George. That's a team leader, right? That's like part of what you're doing. And like, similarly, I have no doubt that like in that situation, if the Ferraris got any closer, Lewis would start to try and defend for George if asked. Right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That didn't happen today, but I feel like that would happen because you believe in what the team is setting out to do. And I think Max Verstappen today showed his true colors. Like, this is a feeling that, I've said it before, I'm not a fan of his. I think he's an incredible driver, but I get these kind of bad vibes from him. This is one of those things where, like, he is in this for himself. He is not in it for the team. He is in it for nothing else. He is in it for himself.
It's the smoking gun.
Yeah.
It's so you can compare it to the other team orders that were attempted, which was Leclerc. basically begging the
Oh,
team to
I'm
have
pleased you
Carlos
mentioned
let him
that
by.
because I forgot about this. Come on, Charles.
Like, it was sad. Like, he's
It
literally
was
like,
pretty upsetting.
think about the points. Think about the points. The team. The points, guys. But, like, honestly, that would be more reasonable than what Max did, right? Like,
Okay, I
you're
can see that.
asking your teammate to give you up a podium, right? Like, that's a big deal. But, like, you can kind of understand something like, oh, if they really wanted to pull something like that. But Max, it was P6. Who cares?
Yep.
Like, literally.
Yep.
The amount of blowback that he's going to get from this,
Yep.
the amount of people who are big Max fans are like, man, Checo's been there helping you the whole time, and you're going to be petty and a lot of other words that I'm not going to use on air right now for no reason. I honestly think it's going to do way more
I am
damage
fascinated
than
to
this.
see how the Red Bull PR machine tries to spin this. Because, like, the problem they have is we've all heard Max say it. That's the issue. There's no way of getting out of this. We all heard him say it. And, like, I kind of don't imagine he's going to say any different if asked. Like, I'm sure they've asked him. I haven't seen it. If anybody in our live chat has got any comment from Max, like that he's given in a post race, I would love to see it if anyone's got it. But like, I can't imagine that he is going to say anything different than what we've already heard him say. And like, there's some like weird conspiracy theory about Monaco, which I don't see how that holds up. Like, there's the idea during a qualifying in Monaco, Sergio had an accident. He hit Charles. I remember this now. I Googled it before we started, and I saw an image of it. And apparently, Max holds this against... This is what this theory is, that he holds this against Perez because Max couldn't complete his lap. Now, if that's true, you're a world champion, man. It didn't matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you're 100% right. The Red Bull PR machine is going to spin this as hard as they can. I guarantee you the second Max pulled in, they pulled him aside. Look, you made a mistake. You absolutely made the team look bad. You did, Checo wrong. Live on air on the radio, you're going to apologize or you're going to say, oh, I'm going to help him next time. And you know what? I was just in the heat of the moment. And, we had talked about something before. You're just going to spin and you're going to throw all the stuff you can to muddy the waters to make it seem like, oh, there's more going on.
Breaking news. So this is from the precepts in the chat. Helmut Marko has said, at Abu Dhabi, Max will do everything possible for Checo to get second place in the Drivers' Championship. Everything is cleared up internally. That's the goal for Abu Dhabi. Don't believe it. I don't believe it. How could you, within 20 minutes, right? How has Max changed his tune this much?
He didn't. He's being told to by Helmut. Like, again, like Max was selfish here and saying that these are his true colors. I think you're completely correct on that, right? And again, like I come from someone who's like been very, admiring of his driving. And I get that, yes, these are 20 of the most elite drivers in the world. They're going to have egos and they're going to want to be the best, right? But this was such a stupid thing for a completely meaningless point to not give to his teammate, which was meaningful to him, right? Like, this is literally like, oh, this is my toy and I'm not going to play with it because I want it, even though I'm not going to, I don't need it. It's absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, we're all going to hear all kinds of spin. We're going to hear all the backpedaling they can because obviously Red Bull, Max says this because he can say it. Max knows that he can pretty much get away with whatever he wants at Red Bull. Like, it is his team, right?
And that's the wrong way. No team should allow a driver to ever get to that level, right? I think it's been pretty clear for a long time that they have built him up where just like it's a case of, if a driver can't drive well for Max, we'll just get rid of him.
Yeah.
And the problem that Red Bull now has is they found one that can. But
wow.
No, but like Perez is the only driver that has been able to put in good results next to Max is kind of what I'm saying, right? Like there has been for years this huge discrepancy between the first and second driver at Red Bull. And like we're now at a point where like Perez, whilst he's not at Max's level, can defend for him because he's good enough at that, but also can put in excellent results to get him to a point where he's fighting in contention for second, right? So like, and you need both of them to get a Constructors' Championship over the line, right? Like it has taken years for them to get someone in with the confidence, experience, and quality level that Sergio Perez has had, where stuff like this, like as soon as like Ferrari need a second driver, or like maybe McLaren, they're gonna, if they come knocking at Sergio's door, it's like, well, I'm not getting what I want here. Like potentially, I might not win anymore. Like I'm not going to get a drivers' championship. But he's probably thinking they're not going to let me have one here, so I might as well go somewhere else and try and compete for it. Because if I'm Sergio Perez, I'm now saying like they're never going to let me win because he's never going to allow it. Right? I'm never going to be in a position where they will put team orders in my stead because he just won't allow it to happen, and they'll keep letting him do it. Like I'm not saying that is the case, but if I was Sergio Perez, that is how I would feel in a moment like this. That like even if they're saying this, surely he's not going to believe that that's going to happen next week, no matter what is said.
And what's made them such a good sort of team here, or at least between Max and Checo, is that Checo has been that good number 2, right? Like he's been able to consistently do well, help Max defend, get some valuable points for the team. And if that relationship starts breaking down, if Checo just really realizes like, oh man, this is who my teammate really is, which is again pretty much exactly what he said. Now, mind you, Checo also is a professional, and he'll probably realize that there's no better option for him than Red Bull. He's doing well. He is able to win some races. So he'll probably ultimately just deal with it. But I just think it's worth for everyone who's a fan of Formula One just to kind of think about what happened today. And yes, things will evolve. There will be spin. We'll all kind of forget. But like,
apparently Max is saying the same thing now, that he'll do everything he can to help. But like, let's imagine.
Sure, whatever.
Let's imagine he does, right? Let's imagine we get to next weekend and he does. Doesn't make a difference for what happened today. And also, now we're opening up the possibility that there is even a chance, right? Where there was a chance today that he wouldn't allow. So it doesn't matter about next weekend. Like, again, like, aside from being told off, what has changed for Max in the last 20 minutes?
Yeah. Now, if next week Max and Checo are P1, P2, Max pulls over and lets Checo win the race, all right. That might convince me a little bit.
It's not going to convince me.
Make amends.
It will convince me that something happened that made him do it. What it wasn't was his feeling for his team. Yeah. Because when given the opportunity with nothing hanging over him, like no bad, like, Yeah. And also as well, like, this is clear. Like, this is the thing of like, oh, it's all going to be better next week. What Max said was, I've already given you that. So they've already had these conversations before.
Well, again, it's all a little bit muddy when you hear a little snippet of radio.
No, but like he says, it's along those lines, I've already told you this. Like I've already given, like these conversations have happened before, and it's like, no, I'm not doing it. So, but like now, next weekend, fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably pretty clear that he's realized how bad that sounded. I'm sure the team have made it very clear. Like, you sound like an absolute person who is not nice.
Well, no, he sounds like Max Verstappen of 2018, 2017, 2019.
Sure.
Not like the guy they've had this year who's tried to be real squeaky clean. Like, it'd be like, love the team, thanks to the team. Like, I hear it a lot, like in a way that it doesn't sound real to me. Like, it sounds very like, these are the things you need to say. Like, thanks to everyone back at the factory. Like, basically, it's like the stuff Lewis says. But like, but like when you hear someone else say that, it's like, that doesn't sound real now, because it just kind of sounds like I'm saying what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah. And look, I know we could go on this for a while, but can we all just take a second and imagine if the situation was reversed and it was Mercedes team orders instead of Red Bull? And imagine if Lewis had said that about George. Can you just picture the blowback from the team, from the fans, if Lewis had ever tried to pull something like that? But Max, look, we all know he'll be fine. People will forget all about this, right? But like, man, it's just I feel like I've lost a lot of respect for Max today. It's just such a classless, just selfish move. I know we have to talk about other things, but
I want to talk about good things, because it was
a good race,
a great race with great wins, and something that I have been very excited about. I will say that to me. Max to show his true colors, it's kind of like, that's just icing on the cake for me today, baby. You know what I mean?
You just got your whole bingo board. Mercedes won,
race of the year.
Max.
This is a race of the year. Underperformer of the race.
Oh, man. Okay, so after saying all of that, Checo? Look, okay, let me explain.
All
Let
right.
me explain. Checo was doing all right, and he had some pace, but I know that he had a little bit of an issue toward the end as far as what he actually had, with his tire offset and everything. But he was dropping tons of positions, even when he had the best strategy. He couldn't keep up with George. I will admit that calling him the underperformer of the race is a little harsh, especially given his wonderful and very kind teammate today. But this wouldn't have been a problem if Checo had maybe just a little bit more pace and was not getting passed by even people like Alonso. So after all that, I feel bad about saying this, but Checo.
Interesting. All right. Well, I mean, I can see where you're coming from with it, because again, it was like, to even be in that situation with Max.
Yeah.
Well, look at what happened to Max's race, and he still got back up there with you again. So I can see what you're saying there. I mean, to me, it's one of the Red Bulls. I feel like was the underperformer.
One of them. Oh, okay, gotcha.
And people could just make up their mind of which one. Back marker of the race. I didn't have anyone. I saw you write one down, and I'll go with it.
Yeah. Seb. I don't understand what happened, right? I mean, he was doing absolutely terrific. He was running honestly like P5 for a while, and then he just kind of fell off. And even the fact that he got passed by Lance is really sad because he was doing such a great job. But I will say one thing, even though actually this is a true back marker of the race, is Yuki. What happened to Yuki? I don't know if you were paying attention toward the end, but so basically, at least the TV broadcast showed that the two Williams could unlap themselves. Yuki was not listed as one of the drivers who could unlap himself. I don't know what happened. He was kind of in the middle, and at one point it seemed like he was going to try to unlap himself by himself, but then he didn't know, and he ended up not. So Yuki was actually the only driver. I'm going to double check this, but as far as I know, Yuki was the only driver to actually finish the race a lap down, and it seemed like it was a problem. Yes, so Yuki's the only one a lap down. It seemed like it was a problem with the FIA because there's no reason all three of them were.
Because I saw a moment where Yuki was doing something weird. I'm like, what is he doing? I didn't catch that he was actually ever needed to unlap himself.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly. Some people in the comments are saying that maybe there's some specific rules about the timing, or he was in the pits at the wrong time, or whatever the case was. Clearly, there's a lot of confusion there. I find it really hard to believe. I mean, obviously, we've had issues like this in the past.
I don't find this hard to believe.
But I don't understand quite what went wrong. It's really hard for me to believe that it's Yuki's fault, because, I mean, when they let lapped cars by, Yuki was there, and it was a very long safety car period. It wasn't like they didn't have time to get out there. So I guess while Seb is my true back marker of the race, Yuki was quite literally the back marker of the race who got screwed by some rules or something. Yeah, man, Yuki's just having a time. He's just having a time. But yeah. Okay, Mike, I'm going to just say it. What was your favorite thing of the race? Wait. Can I take a guess?
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing of the race? Was it seeing... I'm going to try to make a joke. Of course, it's obvious what your favorite thing of the race was. Please illuminate us your feelings and your thoughts on the moment.
I'm actually going to go with something. I assume that you're angling towards George's win, which obviously I adore. Yeah. But I think my favorite moment of the race was the pure hammer time after the incident. Because George, absolutely dominant, right? For the whole race. Yeah. And sometimes when a driver does that, it's you don't see a lot of them, and he's out there doing his thing. And of course, it just because I will say my favorite thing happened after the race, which was watching George's reaction, right? But if we were saying that was my favorite thing of the whole weekend, was just seeing how much it meant to him. It was fantastic. Hearing our anthem again, fun fact, first time God Save the King has ever been if it's the same piece of music, then with lyrics, but it's been, anyway. It's one of these silly F1 facts, right?
Isn't it normally God Save the Queen, and then does it just change to whatever the monarch is?
Oh yeah, our national anthem is now God Save the King, so the words change.
Oh,
so it just changes Queen to King. That's the only change.
Really?
Yeah. So we have a new national anthem.
I heard God Save the King, and I was like, that seems weird. I feel like that's not what it's normally called.
No.
Okay,
but it has to change, right? Because depends who we have. But we just have had a queen for a really, 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 really long time, right?
For as long as we've all been alive.
So. But that, it was obviously, that was all fantastic. But watching Lewis just eat the opposition lap after lap was, I've missed that. I've really missed that.
It was like last year.
Yeah. it was just like last year, and it was really interesting. There was so much talk of that leading in to the race today, of like how I can't remember. It was like a bunch of penalties or something, and he got given. There was some weirdness to it too, if I remember rightly, because I knew that he felt really put out by something that happened. I don't remember what it was, but I remember at the time Lewis being like, "I'm fighting," and he did, and he won, and it was incredible. And so there was a lot of talk about that leading into this weekend. So that just seeing him. He was just breezing past people for multiple laps. It was really, it was special to me to see that again.
Yeah,
because I feel like I have missed that as a fan this year.
I gotta say, Mike, I never thought I'd say this, but my favorite thing of the race was seeing a Mercedes 1-2.
Yeah, baby.
It just felt like such a refreshing thing because yes, of course, Mercedes. Like the thing is,
and earned.
I feel like
earned too, right?
Earned,
yeah,
100%. Right? Like it's like in Formula One, no, you don't want to see the same thing over and over again, right? Like, while Mercedes are winning all the time, you're hoping for someone else to finally win or whatever the case is. And it's like, while you can have feelings about all the different teams on the grid, I feel like you can't hate Mercedes for anything other than being really good, right? Like they're not they do a good job. I think both their drivers are reasonable. Toto's not some raging lunatic like maybe someone else on the grid. And it's like it's nice to see a team who have had a really rough year and have really not done anything wrong necessarily besides some poor decisions, obviously when it came to developing their car. And it's nice to see them kind of come full circle and actually do really well. And obviously seeing George get his first win, which was well deserved. Although I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of rooting for Lewis a little bit toward the end of just like, man, keep that streak going. You got to get this win. But obviously, I mean, look, George had it covered. The only bad thing you can say about George the entire weekend was the fact that he did wipe out in qualifying, which I will say I do kind of think maybe should be a rule that you don't get to keep your lap if you do well in Q3 or something and then wipe out, which is exactly what happened to Checo in Monaco, where he had put down I think he was pole, and then he kept, when he spun, he kept everyone else from finishing their laps. So I do think maybe that's a rule that should be implemented where, hey, if you
don't get the advantage.
Like if you're doing really well in qualifying and then you wipe out and you crash and red flag and ruin everyone else's qualifying, maybe you shouldn't be able to keep your really nice grid spot. But regardless, I think it was great to see Mercedes actually doing
again,
really
it's
well.
one of those things that needs an asterisk, right? Like if
it's tough.
If you go out but you have a time and everyone else completes, fine. Yeah. Right? You keep whatever you had. But if you red flag the session, I feel like you should drop down to whatever is the bottom of the bracket that you're in. I like that rule. Let's work on getting that one put through. But we'll make an official request.
We'll call Mr. FIA and say hello. Well, because I mean, look, obviously there's zero shot that George did that on purpose. But you can imagine a scenario in which George knows the rain is coming, or any driver, right? Knows the rain is coming, gets a good lap in, and maybe has a little moment on purpose to try to stop things. It's almost as if there was a champion years and years ago who tried to do something similar at Monaco in 2007. Anyway, sorry. Don't worry about it. So, Mike, who was your driver of the day?
George.
Is it Lewis?
Yes, George.
Oh, it is George.
Yeah.
Okay. So, favorite moment is Lewis, but favorite driver is George.
I mean,
fair. I agree with that.
Like the driver of the day went to Lewis, right? Like the official one, and I can totally see why. So like this is why specifically I wanted to talk about George, of like, if Lewis was great, which he was, George kept him at bay. George kept everyone at bay today. Yeah. Like,
he made it look easy.
This was one of those things where, like, look, we'll never know what would have happened if Max would have stayed on. But George, at every point in today's race, when he needed to be, he could build a gap. He built a gap to everyone, including the start, right? Like, he was ahead of everyone by a good margin from the word go today. And he did it. Like, he 100% did it. He did it yesterday. He did it today. He proved why he will be a world champion one day, right? Like he proved that. Whether he'll do it or not, we'll have to see. But like, he shows he has the stuff, right? And we've seen it for a while, but we needed to see something. And like today, he got the stuff.
Can I actually hit you with a slightly hot take?
Please.
I think George might be the most impressive driver of the year.
I think so.
Like, obviously, he has had to fight through an enormous amount of difficulties with his car. But the amount of top fives he's done, the consistency of his performance across the board. No, he hasn't been able to storm through and absolutely destroy the entire field like Max has. But let's not forget, Max has had pretty much the class of the field as far as his car has gone all year long, right? Like, it's not even been close. But to see the consistency of George, to see him finally rewarded with a win, I still don't know if I could, in good faith and conscience, tell you with a straight face that, George is the absolute best driver of the year, like, for sure. But to me, George and Max, they're both up there, right? And I feel
think
there's
it's
just a
between
real
the two of
argument
them.
to be made.
Yeah. Because it's, it's what we were talking about for the first half of the season until he had his first DNF. Was like he was Mr. Consistency. He was at that point the only one that had finished every race, and he was finishing every race top 5 in a car that should not have been able to do it. Where his teammate was a 7-time world champion and he couldn't make it work, right?
Yep.
But George was making it work. Like, I do believe this year he would have been the world champion if Mercedes had the right car. I think Lewis...
The points show that, right?
Yeah. Lewis is obviously very incredible, right? George is younger. And I think it makes a difference. I do think it makes a difference that he has the youth, I don't know, the part of his brain that makes him take risks. I don't know what, right? But I think he could have done it. And I think it really is only a matter of time now until George brings home his first world championship. And I genuinely hope it's next year.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's been terrific to see. And I know that he's had a spot of trouble lately. But generally speaking, I think he's done an absolutely terrific job all year long. I think
not without errors, right? But
exactly,
point to me the driver who has not messed up this year.
Yeah, I think some of his drives early in the season, delivering those top 5s, are more impressive than half of Max's wins, right? It would be the same as if we saw Lance Stroll, get P5, right? Like, obviously the Mercedes is a little bit better than that, but it would just be very impressive to see something like that. But anyway, it has been quite the day, my friend. It has been quite the weekend, and we're almost done with this season.
I know,
we got one race left.
One more. Whew. Abu Dhabi.
Man. Yeah. Well, the good thing is that Abu Dhabi is known as a simple race. There's really never been any
no
drama
controversies.
There. I think it's a good place just to kind of just kick back, enjoy the last race, take a nap. So I'm sure we'll have nothing to talk about next week, and we'll just be, sipping mimosas on the beach, talking about how George lapped the field or something. I don't know.
I never watched last year's because I was on a plane when the race happened.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. You were actually leaving because we had hung out actually right before that.
Yep.
Oh my.
I was coming home from California.
Don't watch that race.
And I never watched it, because I would have, but then after everything that started to unfold, I just can't. I can't bring myself to watch this, so I've never seen it. I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of clips over the next week of it. I saw a lot of clips of it at the time. I watched the relevant parts, right? I watched some of the last lap, right, just so I could understand what had happened, because it, there was a week there where no one could understand what was going on, right? We had a lot of information we needed to learn. So I've seen parts of it, but so I don't think I've seen a race at Yas Marina. I don't think so. Because there wasn't one the year before, I don't think. So I'm very excited. I've driven it a bunch in the game, but it would be incredible if Lewis could pick up the win next week, just to put a point on this season and last year's, right? But we'll see. I don't know.
Here's the storybook finish that would make 100% of people in Formula One happy. It's a podium where Lewis wins, and we see Seb and Danny Rick on the podium, so they can go out.
Well, you know who that makes happy the most? Netflix.
Yeah.
No one's happier.
Yes. And every single person who's ever watched a Formula One race would like to see that podium. But look, I will say, while Max is, of course, still the favorite, like he has been for the entire season pretty much, don't count out Mercedes. We're seeing pace from them lately that is way above and beyond what they've been able to show this year. They've unlocked something with that car. I could see Mercedes being in the hunt, because we didn't think that they were going to be in the hunt, today, and yet they've been consistently fast all weekend. So that Mercedes is looking quick. We might just see a Lewis win. Unlikely, but I think way more possible than I would have if you would literally asked me last week.
So I want to give one last quote for you. I wanted to check. So another one from Max, right?
Okay, here we go.
So, this is about his reasons, right? Like he had his reasons. It's good that we talked about it now and basically cleared everything that was there why I didn't do it. So they had a really productive 20 minutes after the race. Everything got dealt with, which is awesome. And I'm just happy that everyone's good, and we'll move forward as a real strong team from now on.
Boy, how convenient it is that thing that happened all those minutes ago was just taken care of, and we talked it through, and it's all good. And Checo and I are gonna hold hands, walk down the beach, and share some wine tonight as we discuss our happy future and nothing else, because it's totally fine. Wow, that's yep.
It's truly something.
Literally live throughout the Backmarker show, we're seeing the reunification of the Red Bull team.
So good. You love to see it, right? You know what I mean? You love to see it.
It's great.
This was fantastic.
I wish all problems could be solved this fast.
Brilliant weekend of racing. Brilliant weekend of racing drama. This is all this is why I love the sport. All of this, right?
Absolutely.
All of this. There's going to be a whole episode of Drive to Survive about this. Maybe complicated because Red Bull don't deal with them. Did you know this?
Yeah. Max is not. Max is not being interviewed by Drive to Survive, and then he was boicotting Sky. Which
all of Red Bull boycotted Sky. That boycott lasted 1 week, which is just.
I'm not surprised.
More of the pettiness. And Sergio said he didn't want to work with them this year either because they felt like he got snubbed last year, which I do understand.
I'm just gonna give a little pitch to everyone. Stay tuned. After the show, I have a story about that I'm going to share in the cooldown room. So you may want to go and check out the YouTube VOD of this, but I may or may not actually know some firsthand information about that whole Checo thing. So we'll talk about that.
If you do want to catch that video and you are listening to the audio and you want this special story, go to backmarkers.live. That will take you to our YouTube channel and you can check out the cooldown room, which is what we continue recording with the people that hang out with us live on YouTube. The audio of the show is at backmarkers.fm and we're at Backmarkers Live on Twitter. We'll be back next week for the final race of the season. And I guess we will review our predictions for the season that we made before the season began, which I cannot wait to talk about. I have not read them. They're at the bottom of our document, and I have not looked at them. Same. I remember mine. I remember one of mine or two of mine. I don't remember yours at all, so I'm very excited for that. Until next time, say goodbye, Austin Evans.
Goodbye, and we will see you for what I'm sure will be the most exciting race of the year, where everything will be happy and fun, and all our favorite drivers will do really well, and nothing bad will happen. I'm very confident.
All right, stop the audio. What is this story?
I'm so happy that I have the perfect story for you. Just perfectly queued me up because Checo literally told me about what happened with the Drive to Survive thing. I don't think he actually talked about it, but he literally told me. And look, we're at the end of the season, so he's not gonna get mad at me.
Statute of limitations and all that.
He's forgotten that he ever told me this story, so it's fine. Let me pull up get the audio uploading real quick. That was a beefy episode, and that was a good one. Good job, gang. Mike, you did a great job of not being too excited. I thought you were gonna start crying to this episode. I really did. I was like, you watched the podium, you heard "God Save the King." I thought you
had all that beforehand. I welled up a little bit. I got it out. Honestly, I'm kind of happy the Max thing happened because it definitely has balanced the episode out and balances people's reaction to me out. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, this is. Quite literally the perfect Mike Hurley race of all time.
I got exactly what I wanted in every possible way. So perfect.
Every way.
Tell us the story.
All right. So as I'm sure most of the Backmarkers audience knows, last year I actually got to do a video project with Checo. So it was to promote Forza Horizon 5 and Game Pass and everything. So we went out to Guadalajara to shoot a video where he was doing a commercial for Forza, and he's out there in a Civic Type R doing donuts on this big airstrip and everything. And so we had built him a custom computer. So we had actually got our hands on the wheels that he had crashed in I think it was 2019 German Grand Prix. I think it was 2019, back when he was still at Racing Point. So we actually had the wheel, so we built an entire PC in it. We go down to Mexico, we give it to him, right? So I'm hanging out with him, not for a long time, right? But we're playing some Forza, we're shooting some of the video and everything. And obviously, Checo, super busy dude, comes in on his helicopter, does the whole shoot. Literally everyone on the entire crew all wanting autographs and pictures of them. Super nice dude, right? So we're sitting there on the couch. We've just finished up, the main part of our shoot. And we're just hanging out because, Ken's getting some B-roll of, Checo playing and the wheel and everything like that. And so Checo's like, oh yeah, like he was basically like asking about like how the U.S. seems like it's been more popular with F1. I was like, yeah, I think a lot of people watching Drive to Survive. He's like, oh yeah, and he's like, yeah, he's like, I know like the first season they he basically was saying like there was some scene in the first season which didn't make him look good. I think it was like the scene where like he looked like the rock star when they came to the Mexican Grand Prix, and I think it was who was his teammate back then? Was it Ocon? No, yeah, it was Ocon back then, right?
I think so.
Yeah, but regardless, he's like, but he said that in 2020, he'd spent like a solid 3 days with the filming crew, shooting some stuff in Mexico.
Yep.
He like basically taken time off, like he like had taken his family, he did this whole thing, and they cut it all. Like he was basically upset that he had wasted days with them shooting this whole thing, and zero of it made it into Drive to Survive. And he's like, look, I'm busy, man.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know why I'm
understand that.
wasting all my time.
Yep.
And I was like, fair enough. So I don't know if he's doing any Drive to Survive, or maybe he's just doing like just limited interviews or something. But yeah, he was very much upset that
I think
he had wasted
I'd
all the
seen
time on
him
that.
say something like he wasn't going to make himself as available and would see how this year went. Because I believe as well, like there was a lot of this, right? And I think that Netflix and the teams had a meeting. I read about this too, like after this most recent season aired, where I think they were kind of setting maybe some new rules of engagement of like, and because this was the whole thing, right? Of like, there are more than enough stories. You don't need to make them up.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you can see they did a lot of like individual stuff with drivers, right? Like, I mean, obviously they went to go hang out in Finland with Valtteri. We got to see a little more Valtteri than we really needed to, but you can see like I'm sure they were trying to grab all of the drivers to do kind of like a personal little piece, kind of going to their hometown or wherever they lived, where they're vacationing, just to kind of get more of that sort of personal flavor. I
feel like
the season,
they probably did that, right, in case there was a big moment to tie in.
100%.
Because Valtteri's stuff is all about like his struggle, right, of the year, then losing his seat. So like, I mean, I don't mean to, maybe they just didn't have a story to tie in with Checo, but still his point stands as like, I don't need to do any of this. Like, I'm sure he doesn't get paid for any of it, right? Like, like I'm a
He's
busy
like, I'm hanging
man.
out with my family. Exactly. I'm trying to go on vacation or do whatever he was doing. I have a whole film crew follow me the whole time. You have to do the whole song and dance, and they cut the whole thing, right? Whereas they're going to give way more airtime to Max or whatever the case is. So I thought that was kind of like, man, I get it. So yeah.
Yeah, because Max just won't do it because they made him look like a villain. That was basically what he said. Like, it was like, they made me look bad, which is funny to me because it's like, you did all the things. Like, you did them all.
I would say I'm glad that Max took that criticism and
Ran
really shaped his online persona.
What he really said
like
was, I'm going to be a villain. I just want to talk to you about it. That's what he was getting at. He's like, I'm going to keep doing all this, and I just can't be bothered for them to keep talking to me about it. Man, this is fun.
It's wild, man.
This is fun.
It is.
I really expect to, like, I don't know. I mean, who knows what the reaction is going to be like. Like, people have got to see through this comment, right? Like,
nah, dude, people forget immediately.
No, but like, it's not about like the forgetting. Fine, like you forget. But like, if people say like they read that comment and they're like, oh, fine, like really?
Of course they will.
Yeah.
Like, dude, that's everyone sees everything through their own lens. Everyone has their own biases here. If you're a big fan of Max, you're gonna be like, oh well, it was just this one-time thing, or oh, they talked it through and Checo's fine. Like, that's just the way it is for everything, right? I mean, everything is just so polarized, whether it's, it's in sports or politics or whatever the case is. I feel like people have their opinions on things, and all it takes is a little bit of spin, a little bit of kind of, oh, it's fine, blah, 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 whatever, and people just kind of paper right over it. So it's unfortunate, right? It's really unfortunate. So I will say, for me personally, my opinion of Max, I agree with you. I always kind of sensed a little bit of that, like, he seems a little like, but especially seeing kind of that move for such a petty, stupid reason, I've lost respect. Like, I've lost a significant amount of respect. I still think he's an incredible racing driver. And to be fair, his job is not to be Mr. Nice Guy. His job is to do the best he can for himself. But like, you contrast that with Lewis, who I think
but this is the
absolute
issue, right?
gentleman.
Of it is both a team and individual sport.
Exactly.
There
And Lewis
aren't
is a
a
teammate.
lot of sports like this, right? But like you are both a team, an individual that you race for yourself, but you also race for your team.
Yeah.
And today he kind of shows that he is not willing to do that. And this,
Exactly.
like, again, like I know we're just rehashing it now, but like the thing that just blows my mind is like this meant nothing to Matt. And this does nothing for him. Nothing.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, if this was almost any other scenario, I would be like totally fine with Max not giving up the place. Like, you don't have to give up a place to your teammate, right? Like, you don't need to do that. But for it to be something that meant a lot to Checo, for something that Checo has done so much for Max for, and for something that means literally nothing to Max, why would you not just do that? Especially when the team is telling you to do it. And he's like, no, I don't feel like it. I'm the boss here. It's like, man, get over yourself,
I mean,
dude. Like, what's
you've
the
also
point?
got to look at the team at Red Bull too, right? Where they knew Max isn't going to let him have this, right? Like you got to like that, but yet they still told Sergio like, let him go now, and if you stick with him, we'll switch it back. Now they must have, when he's being given that call, like there's not enough conversation going on inside of Red Bull beforehand to make any assumptions to whether that's actually going to happen or not. Now Max would have taken that space from him, no doubt, but that's not how it was pitched to Sergio, right? So it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things where I very much look forward to the next time that team orders come through for Checo to let Max by. Really excited to see how that goes. Cause,
Probably like how Esteban Ocon reacted, which we didn't talk about, right? When he was like,
yeah,
no, man. Like those two hate each other. That's been a massive change,
your
right?
order.
Between Ocon and Alonso. Like, I want to know what happened there because when Ocon got that win, was that last year or this year? I don't even remember.
Last year.
Like, those two were talking like they were best friends. Mm-hmm. Like, something's happened
I will
there.
say, I don't know if it's a coincidence that Ocon seems like he's pretty regularly getting into beef with teammates and other drivers. I don't know what that is about.
Martin Brundle said something
it's
so beautiful about that. Is like, Esteban Ocon's a nice guy, but there's a switch behind his ear, and when he puts the helmet on, the switch gets flipped.
Yeah, I completely believe that.
I think that's the case for a lot of these younger guys. Like, they are very nice to each other, and they're good friends and all that kind of stuff, but they still have the fighters mentality in them, and they will fight each other. But I think maybe one of the differences is a lot of them now can let it go afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I don't know.
It's going to be really exciting to see what happens when two people that do not get on, we already know this going into it, Gasly and Ocon have to work together next year.
Boy, I wasn't going to say it, but like, yeah, that's going to be a time.
It's going to be rough.
Like, I'm very, I'm sure the Alpine team are like, all right, so what do we do to keep this from being a disaster? Anyone got any ideas?
Man, I just pray that, like, I'm always like so focused on like, please let George and Lewis continue to like each other. Like, it really, like,
I think they will.
It seem like so far they seem to be a good team. They seem very like courteous to each other. Like, they do all of the things in public that you're supposed to do, right? They congratulate each other and all this kind of stuff. We'll see. I mean, they both seem like nice guys, like to each other and about each other. So who knows? But
yeah, I think so. I think legitimately Lewis, like I just every year I just gain more and more respect for Lewis. Like, I really do, right? I just think he just is such a solid human being. I think he has no room for error. He has no room for mistakes in the sport, and yet it's a testament to him and his character that he's made it this far, right? I just, to me, I just an enormous amount of respect for what seems like a legitimately excellent human being, both in skill and as a person. So, yeah.
Great day today. Wonderful.
Yep.
I'm going to be enjoying my Instagram feed over the next 2 days.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, I'm sure everyone's going to be very reasonable and understanding about this whole thing, and it'll be.
This is why I enjoy Instagram. So I just get to see the images of Mercedes celebrating. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I got you, man. I got you. Soak it up. Soak it up.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back next week for the final episode of the year.
All right. Have a good one.